Hello there, and welcome to Still and Standing. I'm Amy McCann, your host, and thank you so much for tuning in. Today, I bring you a special guest from episodes past when this was once known as Redefine Your Struggle podcast. I introduce you to Faisal Ensaun. He is someone I am proudly associated with as a certified high-performance coach, and he is an immigrant from a war-torn country facing immense challenges over time, including overcoming addiction and bouts of deep personal despair. Today, he stands as a beacon of success, fulfillment, and purpose, reaching heights that seemed unimaginable in his childhood. Throughout his career, he's had the privilege of coaching over 2,000 individuals from diverse backgrounds, ranging from students and stay-at-home moms to CEOs and multimillionaires. Faisal regularly appears on podcasts and at events, inspiring participants to connect deeply with their visions and unlock their potential. It is my honor to introduce him to you today and to keep in still and standing honesty with ourselves.
I share the story that I've shared with a lot of people, and that's the reason why I do what I do. For me, it always goes back to this moment in front of this subway station. I was leaned over and I was throwing up on the sidewalk on the side. There was blood there, and I was looking around myself. There people were walking about their business. This is in Toronto region, very busy city in Canada, and as I'm looking around, I'm looking at the blood. I'm not really surprised by that. As I look around myself, I feel like my life was passing me by at that time. And I start to feel this kind of surge of pain physically, first of all, that I had. But for the first time in many years, probably ever, I felt this emotional surge of pain, which I felt it all over, and I was surprised by it, and it was more painful than the physical side. And right after that, however, was something very surprising for me, and that was this sense of peace, this sense of joy and bliss. And for a 20-year-old at that time being all confused, I'm thinking like, I must be going crazy. And at the time, I didn't know this, and I didn't make any plans or anything like that. But after that experience, it was no thinking. It was that month I started to make all sorts of different changes in my life. Now, looking back, I realize now after all these years that I connected to a very different part of myself that I had never connected before, through a lot of pain, struggle. And I want to take you back a little bit. So I was born in a third world country in Afghanistan. It's in the news everywhere, almost every year. There's been war there for 40 plus years. And I was born there, and my family and I, we had to leave the place because of war and other challenges, obviously, there. When I was very little. Then we were 5 siblings, my parents, and basically they had to put their clothes on their back and just leave, illegally go to the neighboring country. And find a way to make a living there. And as you can see, there are a lot of survival challenges when it comes to that. Now, somehow, my parents, being parents, they found a way to make a living. And human beings know how to survive. That's what makes us so powerful in almost any condition. We created a life with a lot of great memories, a lot of amazing things to look back at. But also, as you can imagine, there are a lot of struggles there. We went through that. And when I was around 17 years old, I came over to Canada, Toronto region. That's where we were sponsored by some of our family members. And as we came here, obviously it was exciting in the beginning. But as soon as I got integrated into this culture, all of a sudden, everything started breaking down for me. And I didn't even know what it was. And initially, I couldn't make sense of this world at all, because up until then, I had believed, at least at the surface level, that everything I was taught was the truth. Everything I was taught was, oh, this is how life is. But obviously, it's completely different here. It was a completely different culture, different ways of doing things. I'll share a specific story within that. I was in class and in high school. I knew some English, so I was familiar with the language to some degree. There was this girl I actually liked. I had a crush on her. She was sitting in front of me, and I was in the back row. And it was the English class, and the teacher, I still remember, she had a European, Eastern European accent, and she said something. I don't even remember what it was, but this girl gets up and she's like, I disagree. This is how it should be. I look at that and I'm looking at her, my brain can't process that. And it's as if somebody just stomped on my head. And reason being is that I was brought up to think that you can't disagree with teachers. You have to listen to authority. You have to listen to what they tell you to do. That was just one aspect of that, but almost I didn't know who I was anymore. I didn't know what my values were. I didn't know what I stood for. And for some reason, for my kind of mind, I had to make sense of these things. And I couldn't. The more I asked around me, almost everywhere I heard this answer was, oh, that's just how things are. And then in the process, I started realizing other things were coming up that I didn't know how to handle. Most of them were emotional in nature. They were existential in nature. What does my faith say about this? I couldn't make sense of that too. I couldn't process emotions properly. I started getting disconnected from the people around me, from myself. And over time, what came up was alcohol addiction, drug addiction, depression, leading up to that moment in front of that subway station after a few years. And in that moment, like I mentioned, was the first time I probably actually felt my pain. And I wasn't conscious of it, but as soon as I felt it, it brought that level of peace that I didn't need to mentally know anything. I experienced it. And from then on, it started my journey. And in that month, one of the most powerful changes that happened was I started actually looking into all sorts of stuff, from psychology to philosophy, spirituality, history, sciences related to human behavior and natural systems, started talking to people about these things, started opening up, having conversations with friends. My friends circle started changing. And I started on this adventure journey that it was incredible. And I had, at the same time, I also enrolled in college again. I went to engineering school, and I got trained in that. But it was interesting. As I was going to school for that, I was also developing an alternate perspective on life. And as I went, by the time I graduated and I started working in the field, I didn't realize how much I had shifted. And within the first year, I could not relate in this world anymore in the way that everybody lived. I had completely created a different way of looking at life, and I didn't even realize it. And so when I watched the people around me working a certain way, when I saw restrictions and when I saw people doing things that didn't make any sense, and it was subjective to that context, I was like, I can't stay in this. And I found myself being more and more miserable until one day, because I was making my wife miserable too. In the process, the funny thing was that at that time, I would drag her out to the only place I saw solitude in is camping. It was just being in nature in front of fire. She hated going there. She didn't tell me in the beginning. Now she likes it. But at the time, she would just go with me because weekend hit. I'm like, I got to get out of here. I can't take being anywhere here. But in the process, we kind of both connected, but also we started making some decisions. We're both miserable, and she was too. She was trying to realize her own self. Like, what if we made a drastic change? And I knew that if I stayed in that career, I would be successful. I was very good at what I was doing. Everything would be fine. But I knew that I would progressively, at some level, I knew I would get progressively more miserable. Mm-hmm. And I was seeking something more. I was seeking to know myself more. Like, there's something else emerging that I didn't even realize was kind of brewing inside of me. And so we made a decision, literally, I think it was around 2015 didn't even have the money. We put aside all like our credit cards, everything. Was like, let's go for a month away. We went to the West Coast, California area. We took a cruise. It's like, this will probably be one of the last vacations. We didn't do it in a smart way, but probably one of the last vacations that it was for a while. But in the meantime, we went to a few conferences. It was a spiritual seminar. We went to Experts Academy with Brendan Burchard, as you know him. And then that's where we got exposed to the whole coaching world. Yes. And the thing I was interested in Experts Academy was that oh, you can help people with whatever you're passionate about. I didn't know what I was passionate about. I just wanted to work with people. That's all I knew. I just wanted to expand myself and work with people. Those are the two things I knew. I didn't know what it would look like. But when I heard about coaching, actually, it was more my wife. She's like, get that. I'm like, no, I can figure this out on my own. She's like, get it. She actually paid for the program. We had to borrow a bunch of money. But then when we came back to Canada, she kind of handed it back to me. She's like, no, you do this. And I apparently it was her plan all along. And now that I've talked to her, so I mean, and the rest is like, and we struggled quite a bit in the first couple of years of this new life. Nobody understood what we were doing. I had left an engineering career. My family didn't.
Are you there?
Oh, are you here?
Yeah, I am. Can you see me?
I can see you. Did I break off?
Nope.
Oh,
you were good.
That was odd. The screen just disappeared. So,
oh, did it? No, you're here.
So nobody around us understood why we're making these changes. Nobody understood why I'm leaving a lucrative engineering career that I was good at. Nobody understood why we're doing this odd thing that we can't even explain what it is. And right short, like at the same time, we decided to have our first child because that's what she wanted to do. And it was a difficult period, but what we realized through that and through poverty, through struggle, through trying to understand a new business, through doing all sorts of stuff to make it work, we realized that was incredibly important for us to do. Because now we're in a place where we actually built a life that is aligned with who we are as a family. But when I look at me personally, I've never been more at peace as I am now. And I think that's what I was seeking more than anything else, to be at peace with myself, but to more importantly, to be connected to a deeper part of myself that's not shaken by the subjective nature of everything that we do differently in the world, whether it's in one part of the world or in one context or a different context. As soon as I got connected to that side of me, I can pivot, I can change, I can adapt, and that's what we do as human beings. But I needed to know that side. Up until that point, I was living my life based on whatever was handed to me, and I called that me. I called that Faisal, but that wasn't Faisal, and I still don't know who I am beyond that name. And the thing, it's an ongoing discovery. And that's what's so exciting for me, is that I call it the inner adventure. And that's what I help my clients with, is to go deeper and find out who you are in your core, because everything emerges from there. Your intentions, your thoughts, your vision, what matters to you, what you feel. And once you get connected to that, it creates a spark that nothing in the world of form can shift that. It's the stable thing that helps you navigate the amazing world of variation and variety and newness and so many incredible things that we get to discover. But if you're not connected to that, it's like you get pulled away in every direction. You don't know who you are in the process. I don't know if that communicated what you were hoping to, but
well, there's so much packed in what you said, and I was taking notes. I think you saw me looking down here, but I want to unpack it a little bit, just because I saw a lot of mini struggles within that struggle you were dealing with that I think a lot of people could relate to, or maybe thinking in their heads, things like, oh, can I do this if nobody's going to understand it? Or maybe they're in that position now where nobody understands this journey they're on. And so they're feeling that kind of struggle. And to hear you say that you just kept going and you did what you needed to do to get some of that, or to live into that peace that you wanted. Could you just share with listeners what you might say in terms of that struggle, that type of struggle where you're where you need to be, but everyone around you can't really understand it? Is there something you could say to people to give them a little bit more comfort in that area, or some advice?
Yeah, of course. And this is very common to human beings. That's as soon as we all have this thing. One of my favorite coaches, Rich Litvin, says our secret dreams. And it's the reason he calls it secret dreams is because we don't even acknowledge it a lot of times to ourselves. There's something that we want deep down, and we know that, first of all, if we express it, there's a chance that we'll be shot down. Because it's so precious to us. So we don't even, a lot of times it's in hidden somewhere within us. We don't even share it, but a lot of our path is connected to that thing. And so, but let's say you do get the courage to do express that. What ends up happening initially is that you're in the process of discovering what that thing is. So you don't even know how to communicate that. You don't have a clear vision around that. There is a vision, but it's not clear. And you don't know. I mean, when I started off, I didn't know what I was doing for the most part.
Yeah.
I was trying to express it, but for the most part, because people around me were protective of me, and they did it out of care for the most part, that, hey, something is going to go wrong in your career, in your life. So let me protect you. Let me hold on to you. And this is one of those things, a lot of times when family and friends and those around you kind of like we hear that they don't support you in something, in a lot of ways, that's because they care about you. And in their mind, they're protecting you. But obviously it doesn't come off as that. What it comes off as is lack of support, lack of understanding, lack of encouragement, which are the things you don't need to go on a new path, because it's difficult enough as it is. But so then what matters deep down? And this is the part, whatever the thing is that you really want, if that is important in your heart, then there's a vision forming around that. The first step is acknowledging that that's real, and then actually feeling and asking yourself why that's important to you. And the next step is finding supporters on your path. I mean, as much as I shared that other people didn't understand it, there were a few people that did. My wife did. Some people around me did. There were a few people, and they might have not even understood it, but they understood why it was important to me.
Oh, I love that. It's really powerful of you to mention that it's people usually trying to protect you. And I love that perspective, because sometimes we aren't in that, we aren't in that brain set. We aren't in that mindset. I told you I was going to trip over my words today. We're not in the mindset of really understanding sometimes why somebody isn't supporting us. And sometimes we can kind of go into another kind of emotional pain on top of everything else, because everything else feels uncomfortable. And so we add on top of that this emotional pain that comes from that external criticism. And I know for me, that's happened as well. And I know that can work to really set us back. And what you said really overall is that when we're faced with uncertainty, we can get reconnected with our hearts. We can tap into that to better embrace whatever it is we're not really seeing ahead yet. And I love what you said. If you have it in your heart, you're creating that vision. It is building itself. It's there. And I love that you mentioned that you didn't necessarily see all of it. You didn't really know where it was going, but you trusted it. And I love that, because that is the primary focus of my work in terms of the uncertainty, embracing it. But how do we do that? And so what you're saying is you're talking about this connection to heart. And I think that that can be really a powerful thing to do. And I think a lot of us, again, we get so caught up in the struggle of what everybody else is thinking that we can become no longer connected to that dream. And as you said earlier, what did Rich Litvin say? It was the
secret dream.
The secret dream. And wouldn't you say it kind of goes back into that secrecy, and it hides and dwells within us? So would you say that someone had to go through something as dramatic as you did to be able to attain the level or that awareness that you needed peace, or that awareness of feeling of peace, to be able to experience that? Or do you think that it's in people to pursue a more peaceful inner state in order to get more connected to some dream that might live inside of them? How do you see that?
Yeah. So I mean, I think context matters in these things a lot. Like it matters. Like if we talked about the same things a few decades ago, we would be talking about it very, very differently, because it matters what kind of world we're in. And here's what I mean by that is that a lot of like the form that, for example, I'm doing coaching. I mean, coaching is a medium, but what am I doing within that medium is connecting. Is supporting people, growing myself through those experiences. But this specific medium and the way that it's available to me, having the ability to work with people all around the world, this would not have been possible a few decades ago in the way that I do it. So this gave me this sense of possibility that now, okay, I can create a whole bunch of freedom with this medium and do all sorts of things around it. And it helps me grow this part of myself. Now, for me, and I mean, big and small is relative to your perception. It doesn't actually matter. So our state is, I think it comes down to being honest. Honesty is probably one of the, and I'm not talking about when people say be honest with others. I think that's secondary. We have all sorts of reason when we're not honest with others, fear of retaliation, fear of all sorts of things that comes into it. And obviously, I value that, to be honest with others, because it creates a better collaborative experience. But the primary honesty is honesty with ourselves. And I've found that in my experience coaching thousands of people. I found that in my experience being connected to people, trying to understand this in myself, is that the hardest thing to do is be honest with ourselves. And that's looking at things as it is, not as you want it or as you want it to change or all sorts of stuff. Is that when you're sitting here, and this is what in my story, that's what I avoided more than anything else, because it's painful. And that is going back to the moment where I was avoiding all sorts of stuff, and I was going towards all sorts of addictions, all sorts of problems in my life. The honesty was that I was struggling. I needed help. I didn't get help. And that process was very painful. And I struggled with that, because what we do is when we have pain inside of us, especially if it's emotional in nature, because we don't know how to, like if your hand gets cut, you know exactly what to do with it. You're not going to walk around with blood coming out of it. You're just going to look at it, be like, oh shit, I better clean it up, put a Band-Aid on it. If you get a deeper cut, you know where to go for support. Call 911 or go to the emergency and they'll patch it up for you. Now, the new thing that has come up is now we're becoming more and more aware of the emotional impact of all the things that have happened in our life. But we don't know what to do with emotional wounds. People don't know how to process these things. I was completely unequipped. To do that. So the first part was being honest that, hey, I need support in this area. Now, amazingly, the world has shifted so much since the time that I'm talking about. So many things are available. Like you can get anonymous counseling, you can get coaching, you can get, and it's becoming more and more normal. And once you become honest in that area, is, hey, I need support. So the next step is, who can help you? Are the people around you equipped? Are they equipped to support you in that area? If they are, great. Go to your mentor, friends and family, whoever can support you in there. If they're not, then you're seeking something outside of that. And that's where a lot of those things get revealed. And that could take all sorts of shapes and forms. It doesn't have to be one thing. It doesn't have to be just coaching. It doesn't have to be just counseling. It could be all sorts of things that you need support with. So that was just one example of, but our own system gives us signals. It's built into us, but we don't listen to it. We're not taught to listen to it. And the things that we listen to that are painful, we don't know what to do with that, especially if they're emotional in nature. And for me, they were emotional and existential. So it was emotional in the sense that I had a lot of trauma growing up, physical and emotional trauma. I didn't know how to process them. Existential, I couldn't make sense of the world that I was in. And I needed somebody to help guide me on that process. That's how human beings are. We need support to be guided around us. This is the reason why you're doing this, because and that's why I love what you're doing. I really respect it, because I would have wanted to listen to something like this.
Well, I'm so glad you said that. And I know that people listening to you today are going to get a lot out of this. What I'm hearing from you is that what they need to do first is just really become honest with themselves, because that is more powerful than even being honest or trying to be honest with other people.
And I mean, this is it's very simple to point out in the world. Mm-hmm. So if you find yourself distracting yourself in all sorts of ways, like you find yourself going on your phone constantly, you find yourself going eating for no reason whatsoever, you're not hungry, you're just picking up something and constantly eating it. You find yourself distracting yourself with people, in the sense you just want to jump into all sorts of conversation for no purpose whatsoever. Just pick up the phone, call, talk to somebody. There's nothing wrong with that, but if it becomes something that's distracting you from your own life, your own self, if you find yourself picking up anything that you don't have control over anymore, and it's running automatically, and it seems to be distracting you from the thing that you're dealing with. And that's the definition of addiction. And Dr. Gabor Mate talks about it, that we define addiction in very weird ways. So certain addictions we're very aware of, like alcohol addiction, we know about. Drug addiction, we know about. But there are all sorts of addictions. There's social media, there's power addiction. There are business owners that are addicted to power. There are politicians that are addicted to power and fame. There are celebrities. There are average people who are addicted to, like, they can't look at people. They're always on their phone. So these are signs. These are signs that you're avoiding pain. Especially emotional pain. These are signs that there's something that you're not, either you don't have the ability to deal with it, or it's too painful for you to look at it, or a combination of the two. And this is where time alone is really important. And when I say time alone, not for you to sit there and watch TV or be on your phone, but literally be with your thoughts. Notice your thoughts. What's happening? What's the chatter in your head? What do you feel on a consistent basis? Is it this void that you have? Is it this anxiety? Is it fear? Is it your emotions are powerful signals that's telling you something very important inside of you? So there was a Joe Rogan podcast. It was interesting. He interviewed Sadhguru, this spiritual teacher, and he's like, "Well, it's a human. Like our system doesn't come with a manual." And Joe Rogan said this, and then Sadhguru looked at him and was like, "No, it does." He's like, "It does? Where is it?" Like, it's built in. Our manual is built into us, and it's constantly telling us what to pay attention. It's very similar to when you get a cut, you will feel it. It's the pain is not a negative thing. It's getting you to pay attention. You need to fix that, otherwise you're gonna bleed out, or it's gonna get infected. Your emotional system is helping you understand how you're navigating your thoughts and all sorts of things, influences that you've had in your life. How are you navigating that? And we're becoming aware of this stuff, but almost everything that we learn, it becomes a dogma after a while. So mental health awareness. Oh, for example, positivity becomes a negative thing over time. Oh, I'm positive. And it becomes a pretense of being positive. And then you're actually kind of suppressing the things that are bothering you, because I'm being positive for the sake of. So the real honesty is spend some time alone. Find out why you're doing, no matter how busy you are, take a few hours. What's happening in your life? Take an inventory of what's happening inside of you. What are the thoughts that are happening? What are the external inventory of your relationships? Are they fulfilling? Are they connected? Are they encouraging? What is the effect of your environment on you? What are your thoughts? How are you affecting your environment? Are you going towards the things that matter to you? And in this process, you begin to start to see signals. And as soon as you start to see it, a lot of it actually initially comes as pain. And that's not there to hurt you. Same reason as your cut is not there to hurt you. It's telling you, oh, okay, notice it, so you can process it, so you can actually move forward and make decisions in a positive direction. Now, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say how I appreciate the profound message in the topic of distractions. because I'm thinking about people who talk a lot about how distracted they are, or they wish they were less distracted. And a lot of the conversations that I hear are, well, when I just need a vacation so that I'm just not distracted, I can refresh and recharge. And I love what you said, how, you're not talking about just taking time alone to go look at your phone again, or even necessarily, and I'm just putting words in your mouth now, taking that vacation, because that's what I'm saying, because a lot of times what that really represents for me when I see people do this is another escape. It's that bigger escape to distract, just in a different way. And what you're saying, what I'm hearing you say, is that what we can do for ourselves is take ourselves into a more profound time alone that's purpose driven, that is asking questions, that creates a space where we can become more honest about the pain that we're experiencing. And that is just something that I think so many more of us can engage in. And this conversation is really important, especially because as we record this, it's Mental Health Awareness Month. And oh yes, and I knew that there were parts of your story that would really play into people who are tuned into this topic this month. When we have emotional pain, of course, it affects our mental health. It affects all of those systems within us. And you mentioned the signals and how we do have this path or map inside of us to guide us, but it's about becoming more aware of those signals as opportunities. This is what I'm hearing from you. And so what you're describing here is this obstacle of emotional pain that's just fraught with a lot of different things. You talked about external things being thrown at you, like people not understanding, or you internally not wanting to really get help, just wanting to figure it out on your own. There's just so much in there, Faisal, with what you have shared with us today. And the biggest opportunity I see is that deeper dive into honesty with the pain we're experiencing. And I love what you said earlier about how you couldn't even feel, or you didn't know that you were feeling that way until you felt that way, meaning peaceful or painful, whichever camp you were living in. And once you started living in either one of those, you started to, first of all, with your peace, you started to become more active because you wanted to feel more of that. And then when it came to your pain, you became more active in your honesty with yourself. And then, just trying to get help and becoming resourceful, which I think it was Tony Robbins that talks about. It's the power of resourcefulness. It's about really your decision to become a resourceful person that will make or break you over the long term. So yeah, I had to say all of that because there's just so much that I'm excited about you talking about. So keep going.
There's one thing in there. So whenever we talk about these things, we talk about individuals, and that's a little bit misleading with human beings because our mind doesn't work at an individual level very well. We have an individual perspective, but human beings by our nature, we're not individual. Our thinking is very collective in nature. I mean, just follow most of your thoughts, other than the ones that are visual or which you can remember experiences. Think about most of the thoughts that come to you are based on your language. Where does the language come from? It was a taught process. You were taught that language. It comes out of your culture. Most of the behavior that you have is around the models and beliefs and things from your language. That's what I was talking about. I came from two different cultures. I lived in two different cultures, and then I came to a third culture. They all thought differently about so many different things. They're human beings. Their basic needs and emotions are the same, but their strategies for how to fulfill those all sorts of things are very different. There's a huge variety in there. So most of what we think we are is just a bunch of thought processes that are given to us. So that's why what I care about is to get people to go deeper and really notice deep down how they feel and how they look at themselves. And then automatically that process goes back to your place in the bigger scheme of things, in your family, in your community, in the world. And this is why human beings have been asking these questions. Why am I here? What am I doing? Where are we going? Existential questions around purpose. And this is why purpose is such a powerful, if your clients have, I don't know if you've ever read this book, the Man's Search for Purpose by Viktor Frankl.
My favorite, one of my favorites.
And he talks about something really profound, is that human beings can almost deal with almost any circumstance as long as there's a purpose associated with that, as long as they see some kind of purpose in what they do. And I think one of the biggest downsides of the world that we live in is there's too much in there. There's too much data. Nobody can make sense of it. There are too many subjective experiences converging. Everybody's saying, no, this is right. This is right. This is real. That's not real. And those who understand it, even they have kind of ruined it in the sense that, oh, well, your subjective experience matters. Great. Yeah, that's real. That matters. But now we're kind of boxing people in that experience and not letting them expand that to, like, what does that mean for their place, for their time? And then on top of that, add so many signals that have been influences generationally in different parts of the world, where we're taught to think about ourselves a certain specific way. And a lot of that is around you're purposeless, you're random, you're just a part of a bigger cog in the wheel, you mean nothing. But people deep down know that in their experience, they want to know meaning and purpose and significance. These are human needs. We all have a need for significance. We all have a need to understand what is it that we're doing in a specific area. We're not random. We don't do things randomly. We have patterns. Nature has patterns, but we've been taught otherwise, and it's created all sorts of confusion. So our job, it's a daunting task, but once you see that, oh, in the sea of confusion, you're here for a purpose to connect and create something. It doesn't have to be a big thing. It could just mean that you're at peace with your single family and just connecting with them in a great way. It could be just you're living at peace and doing the thing that matters to you. That could be your hobby. It doesn't have to be a big thing, but once you figure out what you align with, then that becomes your guiding principle. That's why actually I think that even though I'm not a religious person, I think religion played a very important part in human beings understanding their purpose, but now that's fading away. The world is going more and more towards secularism. And I went through that process. I came from a religious background. I jumped into the secular world. I was utterly confused. Like, holy shoot. I didn't realize how much that was holding me together. But now I come into this world. Now, how am I going to make sense of everything? I did over time. But the thing that I'm trying to drive out of that is that the religion played a purpose in the sense that it helped people make sense of the world that they're in. It gave them purpose. That is a powerful thing. Now, people utilize it in all sorts of ways, positive and negative. But now you find yourself in a place where you're doing the same thing over and over. You're going to work, coming home, there's watching TV, there's not much happening. There is no purpose. There is no cohesion. You're living in your little world. That is not how human beings are meant to live. You're not connected to those around you. You don't find any significance in what you do. You're just going day in and day out. That creates all sorts of tensions and voids and everything internally and existential problems, because we're a conscious being. We need to make sense of what we're doing a lot of times. And then that's the biggest dilemma of human beings, that we know that we know. If we didn't know that we know, we're very aware of our mortality. We're aware of that this is a short life. We avoid it. And we're aware of our relationships. They're going to end at some point. Everything that you know around you is going to end. So then what the hell are you doing in this short little period? If you don't get yourself to not figure out everything, I'm not telling you to become a philosopher, but if you can't just come back to your world and say, what am I doing with my life? And is this thing that I'm doing with my life, is that important to me? And is what I'm doing important to me? Do I feel good about this? Do I feel fulfilled? Do I feel connected to my life, relationships? If you can answer that honestly, great. If you have doubts, you look in the mirror every day and say that I'm miserable. There's something missing. I'm going to fill it up with shoes, clothes, money. If there's something missing in there, those are signals for you to pay attention. because that's not going to end. It's going to get worse and worse and worse. I know I'm making this worse and worse and worse, but you'll get to a point where this translates into all sorts of negative things that you won't be able to handle at that point. But these signals are telling you, find yourself.
I love the signal of doubt. I liked how you mentioned that, because I think a lot of times that's not necessarily top of our mind in terms of a good signal to say to us, this just isn't working. And I also love how you brought together the idea of purpose. I think is stressful for some people because they're thinking they have to come up with some huge vision, or that purpose means they have to do something so profound that millions of people will be affected. And I know that in the work that you and I do, we know very well that it's about that one person at a time energy that we're really after. If we can impact one person, and saying that, I want listeners out there to really think about, if you're struggling with not feeling so good in your life, maybe you think you don't know the answer to, I don't know what my purpose is, or it's stressful to even think that way. What in your life today can you do on purpose that builds that higher level connection with the people that are immediately around you? Faisal mentioned your family. I mean, if you're at home and you're in these distractions and they're becoming worse over time and you're disconnected from everyone in your immediate circle, how is that making you feel? How is that translating? And could there be a way that you could now turn your energy every day into your meaningful purpose? So thank you, Faisal, for really bringing that to light in terms of our daily life, because sometimes I think we just look too far outside of what's happening around us.
Yeah, it's that quote that says, you don't have to be great to start, but you need to start to be great.
Love that one.
And it's like, it's in simple things. Like obviously there is this question for human beings, of this existential question collectively and personally, is like, what is my bigger purpose? And that's a lifelong process for everybody. And then I'm not going to say, well, that's exactly my purpose and I'm going towards that, but I have a given purpose that I have assigned to myself based on what I feel is meaningful to me. And for me, it comes down to what's meaningful. And bringing it down to our day-to-day, moment-to-moment life, when you're looking at your whole day, how much of your day is meaningful to you and how much of is meaningless to you? And you get to define what that is. Nobody else will be able to define it, because you know in your heart what's meaningful to you. You might have not looked at it deeply, but when you really sit down, let's say you're spending a bunch of your time with a few friends. Listen to your body. Are you feeling connected? Are you feeling happy? Are you feeling like you gain something from that relationship? Or are they gaining something from that relationship? But if you sit with your friends and every time you come home, you're like, that was a waste of my time, that's a signal.
Yeah. And how many of us listen to that?
Yeah. So it's hard to listen, because like a lot of our survival mechanisms are so connected to that, because we want to belong. And so there are these two forces working. There's a side of us that wants to survive, and there's a side of us that wants to expand. Mm-hmm. And when we're talking about growth, we're talking about expansion. And the only way for you to get out of that is you have to grow. And so the expansion side is always kind of pointing it out to us. It's like a nagging feeling in the back of our head. We ignore it, or in our gut. And so you go to work, you sit there every day, head is down, and like, I'll just do this thing. And then you come home like, my day's done. Or by the Friday hits, like, oh, shit, thank God it's done. TGIF, what you mentioned in our podcast. Yeah. Like these are very strong signals for you to pay attention to. How long can you maintain that? And if you can maintain it at the physical level, you can't maintain it internally, because it's creating problems. Initially, it will be emotional problems, existential problems. Over time, it will become physical problems. Mm-hmm. We're learning more and more that stuff has an effect on how susceptible we are to all sorts of environmental problems, such as viruses or all sorts of diseases that we don't even fully understand yet. And relationship problems. You're like, when I was miserable, I was making my wife miserable.
Yeah.
Like it's why would you? Nobody wants to do that. Nobody wants to make the people, like, nobody wants to come home and be miserable around their family. Nobody's. But if you don't listen to that, that gets worse and worse and worse. The resentment builds up more and more because you're not taking charge of a part of you that's really close to who you are. It's sending you signals constantly.
You used the word resentments, which I'm glad you brought up. I tend to talk about this a lot because a lot of people struggle with the feeling of resentment. And with all of the reading you've done, I'm sure you're familiar with Dr. Wayne Dyer.
Yeah.
So he's now passed, but I love that he always brought into his work this, there's no need for resentments. It doesn't need to exist in our lives. And I know you talked about addictions earlier, and along with addictions, as we know, at least, there's a lot of education in alcoholism, for example. There's a lot of resentments that go along with that type of addiction. And I'm sure there's resentments that go along or that can become resentments later on if we're involved in those distractions you mentioned earlier. Just continuously picking up your phone, for example. That was a great example because that's something a lot of us are stuck doing all day long. And that's a daily life example of that we can immediately connect to and say, oh yeah, I do that. Or maybe you're not aware and you can get one of those apps to see how many times you pick up your phone. But just the simple awareness of tapping into these things can really help you avoid resentments, which are just another level of suffering emotionally, which can lead to those physical setbacks that you talked about. You can get sick. I think I read today, I think the latest statistics I was looking for people struggling, because it's Mental Health Awareness Month, 77% of Americans, I think I read this, are experiencing stress that affects their mental health. And so when we go back to what you're saying, whatever is creating a kind of stress response in your body, and that can be things like resentment, then your mental health is going to be compromised. And so, and as you said, your family, the people you're close to, they're going to be miserable if you're miserable. And although it's not our responsibility to make others happy, everybody has to seek that within themselves. We also, I think, can really do well to remember that whatever we're doing for our mental health is highly beneficial to those we say we love and who we want to be the best for. It helps us dive into a new energy to figure out what our purpose is. And what I mean by that, like you said earlier, is it doesn't have to be this big thing that we can't envision. It can be just starting at home.
And one of my favorite quotes from Manly Palmer Hall, the philosopher, one of my favorite philosophers, he said that your family is your initiation into the world. Mm-hmm. It starts from home. We know that most of our problems, like, and Confucius said something to that line, is that when families fall, the empire falls eventually. In the sense that we don't realize that the problems at the bigger level comes from our homes. Like, who are these leaders in the world? Who are these politicians? Who are these leaders of businesses? They come from normal people. And I want to kind of break down that, like, the term mental health, it's a lot like when people say God. Nobody knows what God is, but they say God.
Oh, I'm glad you're saying this. Yes, I want to hear your explanation.
So, but I want to talk about more specifically, instead of the phrase, that the effect of men. Like you talked about stress. Well, stress is not like when we say stress, it's an actual physiological response in our body. Well, what happens? We're tense. Our muscles are tense. Our emotions are heightened. We might have our heart rate variations are happening. We get sweaty. Like, this is a physiological response to threat. And what happens, and according to Dr. Bruce Lipton, when we go into that state to whatever degree, our energy from our core that's responsible for our immune system, for our regenerative abilities, it gets shot into our major muscle groups so we can protect ourselves, to either fight, flight, or freeze. to figure out how to protect ourselves. Now, it varies. So the difference might be, imagine a tiger chasing you. If the tiger is far, you will feel a level of stress, but you need to do something. But the closer the tiger gets, the more it gets heightened. Now, the problem is that the tiger is in your head, and our mind is incredibly powerful. We can imagine. Most stress is self-generated. We can imagine something that could threaten us. And usually these are things in the distance, in the future. We think of something that could go wrong. Economy is going wrong. My finances are going wrong. My job is not working out. My relationships. We create all these scenarios that are not actually happening. And then it sends signals to 53 trillion cells in your body, or whatever the number people are thinking now. And it tells them, protect me. And when that happens now, that's a natural response. It's a very powerful response. We need that to protect ourselves physically. The problem is that that's a short-term response. And if an animal comes near you, a bear is about to come close to you, and you get the hell out of there, a grizzly bear, after you deal with it, then after a little while, your body goes back to its equilibrium state. Your heart rate becomes normal, tension subsides, you can breathe normally, and your body knows to go towards regenerative mode. Now it's taking care of itself. The immune system is functioning, all this stuff. Because when you're going through that period, if the bear is going to get you and kill you in that moment, it doesn't matter if your immune system is functioning or not. It needs to send all the energy there. So now the long-term effect of chronic stress, that's the thing that we're starting to learn, that oh shoot, now it's not a mental health thing. It's not because it's elusive, right? Mental health is like a nice thing to say, but now it's having effects on the cells in your body. Your organs are not functioning properly. You're not able to get rid of toxins. You're not able to fight off diseases. You're not able to fight off the wear and tear of everyday life. And then on top of that, add to the real stressors, in the sense that you're actually dealing with the death of a family. You're actually dealing with conflict. You're actually dealing with things that you haven't created in your head. That adds to it. Now, over time, we know this, the effects of it is on your heart, on your brain, physically. Your brain, actually, we know that in depression, people's brains shrink over time. So when we say mental health, it's like a nice thing to say, but it has a physical effect on your system. And we pass this model of stress to other people around us, to our kids, to our family. Now the effect is getting amplified. Now stress is a normal thing. Oh, I'm stressed. What do you mean by that? Well, what you mean by that is my body is in a fear state. And a fight or flight state means it's trying to protect itself. It means I'm not growing, I'm not regenerating, I'm not doing anything. And on top of that, we don't sleep enough. So, so now it gets out of control, and it's a miracle that we're healthy. To some degree, we're functional. True. That goes towards how human beings. And just one other point to that is that in our brain, an interesting thing happens. That when you go into the fight or flight mode, it engages the older parts of your brain, which is the limbic system, which is the hindbrain, which means that that's a very quick part of your brain that gets you in a reactionary mode. So if a bus is coming towards you, you're not going to think there and say, well, should I take that route or that route? You're just going to jump out of their way, or you're going to pull your kid out of the way. You're not going to be nice to your kid. You're just going to pull them out of the way. That's your reactionary mode. Now, in that moment, most of the energy from your prefrontal cortex is going to there. You're not actually thinking, you're reacting. So when you go to the normal state, you're engaging the prefrontal cortex that's responsible for connection, for creativity, for growth, for strategic analysis, or sorts of stuff that you need to build a life in this world consistently. So now think about it. Most people are not fully utilizing that part of their brain. And they're walking around using their limbic system, reacting to something that's threatening them. So they're putting these walls around them, but they're not noticing opportunities, because when you go into that state, the only thing you see is the threat. You don't see other things outside of that. You become tunnel vision. So now it's affecting your career, your path. You can't connect with people because you're not in a connective mode. You can't find relationships. You can't connect with people for partnerships in business. You can't build connections to get better jobs. So it's affecting your future. So like when we say mental health, you're breaking down if you're not taking care of that side of you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you for speaking to this topic. My listeners, probably many of them, knew me as a stress coach for a long time. And I wish that I had known you years ago when I had my course in stress, the art of stress management, because I really enjoyed bringing people's voices to this topic. Something you said in there that was really important and plays into this show today, which is you said, we're not able to see the opportunities when we're in this state, when we're in that, we can't see the opportunities. And I love that because what did you say? We're always in our heads or we're worried about something. There's always something internal or most of the time that is creating this stress response in us. And that is the good news too, because that means we have the capability to change. So in all of that, I mean, the fact that this show is all about talking about our struggles, seeing the opportunity in it, succeeding forward, persevering in a way that doesn't have a heavy price tag attached to it, as I like to say, where you're sacrificing your health, you're sacrificing your dreams because you're pushing through. We can push through things and persevere in a way that is less stressful, that we can take control of our attitudes, our thoughts, our behaviors. You mentioned Viktor Frankl, and I probably will mess up the quote because I'm not thinking straight today. But he said, "When circumstances can't change, then we are forced to change ourselves." And there's power in that. And if no one's if you are out there and you haven't read Man's Search for Meaning, please, please, please go read it. It is one of my favorites. So thank you for bringing that up. I tend to quote Viktor quite a bit. Stress, like I said, the way that you described it in terms of not being able to see opportunities is a real important awareness that I think we need to come to terms with. Because without being able to release ourselves of all of this stress, we won't see those opportunities. And what happens then? Then we just become kind of dull people, emotionally pained people. We become less on purpose, miserable, and at the same time, perhaps creating misery around us. So I so appreciate you bringing that up. Again, I have to say to my listeners, we hadn't planned. I told Faisal, come with your story, but I wasn't sure where he was going to go with it. And we said, we're just gonna let it fly today. And this is turning out to just have so much meat to it. So many different struggles within your struggle that I'm sure people are listening to and saying, yeah, I kind of feel that way. And now if we can just look at that and just sort of package it all up for us today, Faisal, I would ask, if you were to develop your own definition of success when it comes to any one of these types of struggles you brought up today, what would that look like? And why is that meaningful to you?
I tend to look at life as a whole. I don't look at just parts of it because we all get focused on specific parts based on other people's expectations. But if you look at life as a whole, the way I define success is a life well lived. And what is a life well lived? Well, there are certain universal conditions for that. You're generally speaking, you feel connected to your life. You are, generally speaking, you are content and happy with your life. You can have misery, you can have suffering, you can have challenges, all sorts of stuff. Those are important. You are growing, you're learning. You feel connection in your life with yourself, with those around you, within your faith, your God, your purpose, however you define that. And the things that you're doing in your life are meaningful to you, and you have time for you to process what's happening in your life. You have time to spend with yourself, with those around you, with the things that matter to you. And fortunately, we are in a world where we can do that more and more and more. We don't have to work day in, day out. We don't live in this 18th century. We choose to do that. But more importantly is that when we look at our life, is the life that we're living, is it something based on, is it giving us these signals, or is it giving us the opposite of those signals, or somewhere in that spectrum? And as a caveat, everything that we said, distraction is normal, it's healthy, everybody has distraction. Misery is normal. Pain is normal. I'm distracted a lot of times, but I'm also focused on the things that matter to me. I'm disconnected at times, but I also feel connection with the people around me. At times, I'm all over the place, but there are times in my life, a lot of times, I feel connected to who I am, to my purpose, to my faith, to what I'm doing. And it's a spectrum there. Now, the point is not where you are based on what others are doing, but where are you based on what's important to you, and all you slowly, incrementally growing within that world. And that means you're taking survey of your whole life, not just your work, not just your finances, not just your career, but every aspect of your life is just as important. And the even more important is, how are you living moment by moment? Because we all know, whoever has gone through all sorts of challenges, from losing loved ones to going through a near-death experience, to all sorts of stuff, that life is too short. It's way too short to sit there and hope that 10 years later you're going to get a payoff out of something that means nothing to you. At the end of the day, what matters is, how are you living this day, this moment, this hour? How are you connecting with people around you in that moment? And you're not leaving behind a bunch of regrets. What you're leaving behind is good memories, and memories that you can look back at and laugh about, cry about, or connect to to some degree. And you can say that, well, it was a struggle, but it was my struggle. Nobody gave me that struggle. I own that.
Oh, so beautiful. So to sum up what Faisal said, what I hear you saying is that success, looking at your whole life, is really all about a life well lived. And he defines that as being connected, having that true and meaningful connection with the people around you and yourself, to, generally speaking, feel content, growing and learning, doing meaningful things in your life. And he talked about the moment to moment being really essential. Also, I love that you mentioned processing. And when we think about times where we have gone through something, really taking time to process whatever emotional pain is occurring at that time is really important. And that creates that space to be able to live on purpose again and feel enthusiastic. Spending time, and I just added that, spending time with others, he mentioned, is really important. And again, that moment to moment, and relieving yourself of that stress, as he said earlier, to be able to open yourself up to seeing and becoming more aware of opportunities, which is what we're all about here. Faisal, I can't thank you enough. And I do want to mention to people that it is Mental Health Awareness Month. Faisal described in detail what that can really mean, how that takes shape in terms of how stressed we are. And the good news in that, as I said earlier, is that we have the power to create change about how that stress is presenting. So we're going to end today's show on with one more thing. I just want, Faisal, you're so great with some of the wonderful quotes that tie into today's show. Is there one more you want to leave us with that really focuses in on some opportunities we can look forward to experiencing?
Can I, and that I was going to share it, but I didn't know if we had time. Can I share something that I wrote a while back? And I woke up at like 3 a.m. and I've shared this in my coaching sessions, just like
absolutely. Yes, please.
I'll read it out loud. And maybe this will, some of your readers, this connects to my belief as human beings. So how we are, but maybe this will be a source of inspiration. So this was like a few years ago. I just woke up at 3 a.m. I couldn't get these thoughts out of my head, and I just wrote it down and just stayed with me. So what it says is, God whispers in your heart, you're meant to be more. You're meant to do more. You're meant to be a powerful force for good. But you don't believe, and here's why. The world has been yelling in your ears constantly since before you were old enough to understand. You are not smart enough, wise enough, good-looking enough, strong enough, or good enough. Let others be great. Over time, these sounds, statements, beliefs, models became a part of who you are. You started to feel as though they are your thoughts and emotions. After a while, you began to think and feel like you're not good enough. You started thinking, who am I to be? Who am I to make a difference? Who am I to be great? Who am I to be a force for good? All the while, the whispers from your heart became more and more faint until you could hardly notice them. Sound familiar? The whispers are still there, my friend. Pay attention. What is God, universe, your true self whispering in your heart right now? I'll leave it at that.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. That was better than any quote.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you so much for sharing your heart, your story, and coming from where you came from and learning how to change your perspectives and just bring this light to our show, to the listeners. Thank you so much for tuning in. And, if you want to reach Faisal, could you tell them where they can find you?
Yes, they can literally look up my name, Faisal Ensaun, or they can go to faisalensaun.com, or you can find me on pretty much on most older social media platforms. I'm not on TikTok. I don't know how that works, to be honest. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. But if you search Faisal Ensaun on Google or faisalensaun.com, I will come up.
Fantastic. And I'll also link those to the show notes so that you can all easily get to Faisal's work. And thank you so much. I'm so proud that you are my colleague. Glad to know you. And I hope you'll come back in the future and talk some more about these topics that seem to plague us at times and helping us to see the opportunity in it.
This was fun. I'd love to do it again.
All right. Have a great day.
You too. Bye.
Bye.